pregnant wife catches millionaire husband with mistress, her revenge shocks everyone. There are moments that change your life forever. Moments you never see coming until they roar into your world, ripping away everything you believe to be true. This story is one of those moments, a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and staggering revenge. Elizabeth thought she knew her husband, Jonathan Graham, a suave, ambitious Manhattan millionaire who doted on her every need until a secret mistress shattered their perfect facade. And Elizabeth? She wasn't just any woman scorned. She was a fighter, pregnant with her first child and determined to protect her future. What she did next sent shockwaves through New York's wealthiest circles. Elizabeth Liz Graham had always believed she'd lucked out in life. Raised in a humble borough of Queens, she'd met Jonathan John Graham while working a part-time job at the front desk of an upscale Manhattan law firm. She was only 19 at the time, fresh-faced and still starry-eyed about the big city's potential. John, 7 years her senior, was already carving a path in the real estate business. He was tall, broad-shouldered, quick-witted, and came from old money. His suit was Armani, his watch was a custom Rolex, and his words slipped forth with disarming charm. From the moment she greeted him in the lobby, Liz found herself mesmerized by John's confidence. He had a way of looking at her like she was the only person in the room. After their first coffee date, everything happened quickly. Late-night dinners at the Mark restaurant, weekends in the Hamptons, quiet strolls down Fifth Avenue. Liz felt like Cinderella stepping into a fairy tale world of designer shoes, fine wines, and penthouse parties she never dreamed she'd attend. By the time she turned 21, John proposed with a ring so ornate it sparkled like a tiny star cluster on her finger. The wedding at the Plaza was everything Manhattan high society could dream of. Celebrities in attendance, the biggest wedding band from La, unlimited Dom Perignon, and floral arrangements rumored to cost as much as an average family home. Life settled into an opulent routine. John's real estate empire soared, making him a millionaire many times over. His offices spanned from New York to London, and he spent half the year traveling between the two. He also invested in tech startups with his longtime friend and business partner, Harold Friedman, giving them a seat at the table in Silicon Valley circles. On the surface, everything about Liz's life sparkled with possibility, but even diamonds have their cracks. Beneath the glamour, Liz often felt lonely. She felt like a guest in John's glitzy world. She had a small circle of real friends like her cousin, Danielle, still living in Queens, and realized that most of the wives in their upper crust circle were only half friends, only as loyal as their next invitation to the philanthropic galas. And so she invested in what mattered to her: love, her new pregnancy, and building a real home for their future child. She was over the moon when she discovered she was expecting. She waited for John to come home from a London business trip to tell him in person. Despite the warm response, she sensed a trace of something else in John's eyes, caution, perhaps, or concern. He tried to bury it with kisses and assurances that he was thrilled, but a tiny voice of doubt lodged itself in Liz's heart. Little did she know, that doubt was the first sign of the cracks in their marriage beginning to widen. Pregnancy was not at all what Liz expected. At first, she was glowing, energetic, and overjoyed. She adored picking out nursery decorations, imagining her baby's first laugh, and daydreaming of the perfect family life. John, on the other hand, grew unusually restless. He took more business calls at odd hours, left their bed earlier, and seemed consistently on edge. Liz tried to dismiss her suspicion. Maybe it was hormones, she told herself. After all, pregnancy often stirred insecurity, but as the weeks rolled on, she began to notice patterns. When traveling for business, John's calls became less frequent, short, and curt. Sometimes he didn't call at all. She also found receipts in his suit pockets from restaurants. she'd never heard of, and once a faint lipstick smudge on his collar that definitely wasn't hers. She confided in Danielle, her cousin, who was known for her practical advice. He's always traveling, always meeting new people, Danielle reasoned. It might be innocent. You know how these big businessmen operate, lots of handshakes and dinners, but Liz's sixth sense wouldn't shut off. There were clues that pointed to something amiss, even if the puzzle wasn't fully formed. The truth gnawed at her as she tried to keep up a cheerful disposition for the sake of her unborn child. One evening, while John was supposedly in London, Liz decided to do a bit of digging. She called the London office. His assistant, Marianne, was polite but seemed perplexed when Liz asked to speak to him directly. "He's not due in the office until next Monday, Mrs. Graham," Marianne said. Liz's heart skipped a beat. John had told her he had urgent meetings and would be out of pocket for a few days. It was only Wednesday. What was he doing, if not attending meetings in London? She thanked Marianne and ended the call, feeling the cold sting of betrayal creep up her spine. She tried to confront John that night, but he didn't answer his phone. Even worse, she had no way to verify his location. His old habit of sharing flight details or updating her on his schedule had vanished. There was only radio silence. Desperate, Liz called an old acquaintance of hers, a private investigator named Derek Howard. They had crossed paths when Derek was investigating a case in the law firm where Liz used to work. He had a reputation for being thorough and discreet. She wasn't sure if it was the right move hiring a pie to follow. Her husband felt extreme, but the doubt was eating her up inside. She needed to know the truth, good or bad. To her relief, Derek accepted her request. "I'll do my best," he assured her, "but you have to be prepared for whatever we find." Sometimes the truth hurts more than not knowing. Liz swallowed hard, tears pressing behind her eyes. She whispered into the phone, "I need to protect my baby, Derek. If he's lying, if there's another woman, I have to know." As Liz waited for answers, her anxiety rose. She looked at the lavish penthouse that once felt so welcoming and realized it had begun to feel suffocating. The staff tiptoed around her as if suspecting something was off. She couldn't confide in them, or in John's business associates, or in any of her so-called high society friends. This secret was hers alone to carry. 2 days later, Derek called. Liz was alone in the penthouse, pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park, when his words came through clearly. "Liz, I've got something. Jonathan Graham is not in London. He's in the city, Midtown Marriott Suite 2402. Her heart pounded. "He's not alone, is he?" she asked, voice trembling. Derek hesitated. "No, he's not. A woman checked in with him. I don't have a clear name, but her ID said Bianca Rossi." Liz's breath caught. She had never heard that name before. This was all the proof she needed, but she wanted more. She wanted to see the betrayal with her own eyes. Without thinking twice, Liz grabbed her purse, slipped on a coat, and left the penthouse. She could feel every breath of the crisp autumn air outside, the weight of the child in her womb, the pounding of her heart. She had no plan, just the kind of raw determination that floods you in the wake of shocking revelation. The Midtown Marriott was a sleek building with a gilded lobby, far less extravagant than the five-star hotels John usually preferred. Perhaps he thought it safer to hide there than in more recognizable luxury suites. Liz marched straight to the elevator, not caring that she wore no makeup and that her hair was pulled into a messy bun. She was fueled by rage, fear, heartbreak, all swirling into a tempest inside her. Her hand shook as she pressed the button for the 24th floor. The elevator ride felt eternal. Each ding hammered into her soul, reminding her she was about to witness the final blow to her illusions. Room 2402. She stood before the door, her heart thrashing. What if she was wrong? A faint, desperate voice inside her prayed Derek had made a mistake. Then she heard laughter from inside John's laugh. The same laugh he used with her whenever he was truly at ease. Liz drew a breath and, before she could lose her nerve, shoved her key card from home against the lock in a pointless gesture. Of course it didn't work. She banged on the door instead. The door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared. She was beautiful, with dark hair and flawless makeup. Bianca Rossi. The woman looked at Liz's pregnant belly, then raised her gaze to Liz's furious eyes. Realization flickered across her expression, but she tried to mask it with feigned confusion. "I'm sorry, I think you might have the wrong room." Liz pushed the door open with surprising force, and there he was, Jonathan Graham, shirt unbuttoned, staring at her in stunned silence. The living room area of the suite carried traces of their affair, half-drunk champagne on the coffee table, clothes tossed across the sofa, an unmistakable scent of perfume. "Liz," John gasped, rushing forward as Bianca stepped aside. "What are you doing here?" Liz felt a wave of nausea roil in her stomach, but not from pregnancy this time. "You lied to me," she managed to say. Hot tears slipped down her cheeks. "You told me you were in London for meetings, and here you are, with her." John stood there like a trapped animal, lips parted, grappling for words. Bianca, perhaps sensing that the game was over, slid toward the bedroom to gather her things. The overwhelming humiliation of the moment stung Liz's pride more than anything. She had never felt more foolish in her life. John tried to touch her shoulder, but she recoiled. "Don't!" she hissed, her voice ragged. "Don't you dare touch me!" He swallowed. "Liz, I can explain. It's not what you think." She let out a bitter laugh. "Really? Because it looks exactly like you're cheating on your pregnant wife." Bianca re-emerged, now fully dressed in a sleek black dress and stiletto heels, a Prada bag over her shoulder. She cast an almost pitying glance at Liz, then moved toward the door. John, still shirtless, tried in vain to block her. "Bianca, wait." She gave him a quick peck on the cheek, her eyes flicking to Liz in a mocking farewell. "I'll be in touch," she said, and then slipped out into the hallway. For a moment, Liz and John simply stared at each other. The reality was laid bare, dripping in shame. Liz finally turned to go, but John grabbed her arm. She spun around, ready to shout, but he looked devastated, tears welling up in his own eyes. "Don't leave," he pleaded. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out like this." The cruelty of that statement almost left her speechless. "Not that you're sorry you're cheating," she said, voice cracking, "but you're sorry I found out." He tried to say something, but words failed him. Furious and broken, Liz jerked away from his grip and stumbled out into the hallway. She walked away as fast as her pregnant body allowed, tears streaming, ignoring John's voice calling her name. Liz spent the next few days holed up in the penthouse, ignoring John's frantic texts and calls. She needed space to think. He'd eventually come home, but she refused to see him. She locked herself in the guest bedroom, let the staff bring her meals, and told them under no circumstances to let Mr. Graham near her. Meanwhile, Danielle insisted on coming over, offering moral support. She also had a few choice words about John's behavior that could have peeled paint off the walls. Liz, though, was beyond fury. She felt hollow. Everything she'd built her life around, everything she trusted, was gone. Even in the darkness, Liz's protective instincts roared. She was growing a child a future that needed stability and security. And so she began to think about her next move. Should she leave him? Demand a divorce? That was the straightforward route, but something inside her balked at the idea of simply walking away. There was a deeper, more primal part of her that wanted justice. Then she remembered Derek's warning, sometimes the truth hurts more than not knowing. She had the truth now. It was brutal, but it also gave her a strange sense of clarity. John pounded on the guest bedroom door, late one night. "Liz, please, let me explain." She pressed her back against the door, refusing to open it. "Explain what? That you were in bed with another woman? That you've lied to me for who knows how long?" His voice was muffled by the heavy wood. "It just happened. I got caught up. Bianca works with Harold Friedman's new venture capital firm. We started a fling, but I swear it's only been a couple months. I didn't know how to stop it." Liz let out a sardonic laugh. "How about just not doing it in the first place?" She heard him sigh heavily, leaning his forehead on the door. "I never wanted to hurt you, Liz. You have to believe me. It was just, my life feels so trapped sometimes. The pressure, the responsibilities." Rolling her eyes, Liz opened the door a crack. "And that's supposed to justify cheating on your pregnant wife. Grow up, John." She slammed it again. For the first time, she felt a powerful, electric current of anger surge through her. It was more than betrayal. It was a desire to take back control. If John wanted out, he could have chosen a more honest path. Instead, he risked everything: her emotions, their marriage, even the future of their unborn baby, just to feel some cheap thrill with Bianca. Liz didn't cry herself to sleep that night. Instead, she made plans. She picked up her laptop, rummaged through emails and files she had stored for her personal reference. As John's wife, she had a certain vantage point on the financial labyrinth he navigated. She'd never been deeply involved in his businesses, but he'd sometimes explained deals at a high level. She also knew a few skeletons in the closet: shady dealings, half-legal maneuvers that wealthy people often used to protect their interests. She needed allies. If she really wanted to protect herself and her child, she might need a lawyer, or better yet, she'd approach John's business partner, Harold Friedman. Harold had known John since they were kids. Harold also had a vested interest in not letting a scandal blow up their empire. If Jonathan's personal life threatened to become public and taint their corporate brand, Harold might be motivated to side with Liz. And then there was Bianca, who apparently worked for Harold's new VC firm. The nerve of her stepping into Liz's life and expecting no consequences. Liz's tears dried into cold resolve. She made phone calls, scheduled discreet meetings. Step by step, she laid the groundwork for something far bigger than simply filing for divorce. Determined to secure her future, Liz secretly met with Harold Friedman at his office, telling no one, not even John. She presented photographs taken by her pie, evidence of John's affair with Bianca Rossi, a rising associate in Harold's venture capital firm. Harold, stunned by the potential scandal, listened as Liz calmly explained her position. She was pregnant and unwilling to let John's betrayal jeopardize her child's future or the company's reputation. "You understand what a public scandal would do," Liz said, voice tight. "Graham Friedman Holdings could face financial ruin, and John's name would be dragged through every headline." Harold paled and tried to propose a quiet settlement. Liz countered with firm demands. She wanted control of certain shares, guaranteed financial security, and Bianca out of their lives. Harold agreed to her terms, warning that John could retaliate if he sensed betrayal. But Liz walked away emboldened. This was only the beginning of her plan to reclaim power and strike back at the man who wronged her. In the days that followed, John tried to repair what he'd broken. He left lavish bouquets of roses outside the guest bedroom, slipped apologetic notes under the door. He even offered to book them a couple's retreat in the Caribbean to heal and reconnect. Each attempt made Liz roll her eyes. Did he think a few flowers and an expensive vacation would undo the trauma of his betrayal? She maintained a cold distance, allowing only minimal conversation about practical matters, her doctor's appointments, the penthouse management, any urgent decisions about the baby's nursery. He kept claiming he'd ended things with Bianca, that it was our mistake, but Liz was no longer that wide-eyed girl who believed every word he said. While Liz plotted her moves, Bianca didn't disappear as she'd hoped. One afternoon, Liz was stepping out for an OB-GYN appointment, escorted by a driver, when she spotted Bianca waiting in the lobby of their building. The woman had the audacity to approach her. "I was hoping we could talk," Bianca said, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. Woman to woman. Liz clenched her jaw. "We have nothing to discuss." Bianca's eyes flickered with something akin to guilt. "I didn't set out to hurt you. John never mentioned you, not at first. By the time I realized he was married, I was already in love." "Spare me," Liz snapped. "He's a millionaire, and you work in his orbit. Don't insult my intelligence." Bianca opened her mouth as if to protest, then closed it again. "I just wanted you to know he chose you in the end. He ended it with me." The hollow ring of those words made Liz almost laugh. "How generous of him," she said, stepping around her. "Now leave me alone. If you have any sense of decency, you'll keep away from my family." Bianca's expression hardened. "Liz, you don't know everything. John, he's in deeper trouble than you realize. His finances, his deals, he's more desperate than you think. He used me to secure certain investments." Liz halted, turning to give Bianca a suspicious look. "What are you talking about?" "Just be careful," Bianca said, genuine worry in her voice. "He's lying to everyone, especially you." "That's all I can say." Liz felt a rush of uncertainty. Was Bianca lying to sow discord, or was there something more to John's business dealings than she knew? She'd suspected he employed questionable tactics, but was the entire empire at risk? She shrugged off Bianca's warning as best she could, but the seed of curiosity was planted. She wondered if Harold Friedman knew more about this. A week later, Liz met with her obstetrician, Dr. Leonard, for a routine checkup. The baby was developing well, healthy heartbeat, everything on track. Liz forced a smile, relieved that at least this part of her life was stable. As she left the clinic, she noticed two men loitering near the exit. They seemed out of place, worn suits, shifty eyes. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She recognized one of them from a philanthropic gala months ago. He was a small-time real estate player who'd tried to corner John for an investment pitch. They approached her. The shorter man with thinning hair forced a polite smile. "Miss S. Graham, excuse me. Can we have a word?" Liz's driver stepped forward protectively. "The lady's in a hurry." The taller man waved him off. "It's about your husband's dealings. We can't get a hold of him." Cold dread gripped Liz. She guessed they might be debt collectors or disgruntled investors. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Any business with Jonathan is not my concern." The man's laugh was humorless. "Not your concern? When his name is on your penthouse and your entire lifestyle." He took a step closer, ignoring the driver's warning glare. "If you see your husband, tell him that George Rizzo wants his money back. He's late on a very large payment, and next time we won't be so polite." Liz watched them stomp away. Her heart hammered. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Bianca said John was in deeper trouble than she knew. Now, random men were accosting her at the doctor's office. She went straight home and demanded answers from John. He tried to brush it off, claiming these men were just small fry, trying to extort him. But Liz had learned to read the flicker in his eyes when he lied. "Stop lying," she insisted, voice trembling. "I'm pregnant, John. Do you realize how terrifying it is to be approached by strangers demanding money?" "Why are they after you?" he sighed, rubbing his temples. "The real estate market took a dive in certain segments. I had some high-risk loans, and I needed quick cash to keep them afloat. Harold's VC connections helped, but it wasn't enough. So I turned to a few private lenders. Short-term, high interest. It was a temporary fix, but I fell behind on payments." Liz felt the room spin. "How much do you owe?" His silence was damning. She pressed on. "John, how much?" He looked at her with hollow eyes. "Tens of millions, Liz. Maybe more." She nearly collapsed on the sofa. All the while she had believed they were financially secure, living a glamorous life. In reality, John's empire was built on shaky foundations. He had taken huge gambles, and when they didn't pay off, he kept doubling down instead of admitting defeat. Then why the affair with Bianca? If you were so underwater, how did you have time to? He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Bianca was part of the VC firm. She connected me to potential investors who could bail me out. It started as a business arrangement. I got close to her for that reason. It went further than it should have. The twisted irony left Liz speechless for a moment. She had always known John was ambitious, but she never imagined him stooping so low as to charm another woman for financial gain, endangering their marriage in the process. So you betrayed me and risked our child's future for the sake of a quick influx of cash. She spat, tears of rage welling up. You used her and you used me. He stood, stepping forward. I'm sorry, Liz, I messed up, but we can fix this. Harold's bringing in more capital, we can restructure the debt. She pushed him away. Don't you understand? This isn't just about money. You lied to me. You destroyed my trust, and you nearly dragged our unborn baby into a pit of debt. There's no coming back from that. With each passing day, Liz felt her righteous anger solidify into a determination to protect herself and her child at all costs, even if it meant blowing up John's life in a way that would make him regret ever crossing her. She visited Harold Friedman again, revealing what she had learned about the private lenders hounding John. Harold seemed genuinely alarmed. This is worse than I suspected. I knew the real estate market was struggling, but I didn't realize John had borrowed from those types of people. Liz leaned forward. You said you'd help secure my baby's future. Let's expedite that. I want immediate action. Harold nodded, steepling his fingers. I can move up the legal transfer of shares. I'll ensure your name, not John's, controls the distribution. That'll protect you if creditors come knocking. But you must understand, if we do this, John may lose voting power in the company. That's the least of my concerns, Liz said coldly. Harold paused, choosing his words carefully. There's another angle you might consider. If we spin this in the press, painting you as the supportive wife who's stepping in to help her husband's ailing business, we can avoid a scandal. You gain control quietly, using sympathy to deflect negative attention. John's forced to play along or risk looking like he's abandoning his pregnant wife. Liz arched an eyebrow. She hadn't considered a public relations angle. It sounded manipulative, but then again, John had manipulated her for years. Interesting. Yes, let's do it. I'll hold a press conference. Spin it as me stepping up for the sake of our unborn child. People will eat that up. Harold gave a small grin. Precisely. Bianca will be sidelined. The affair remains a rumor at best. John's forced to cooperate or else be exposed for the scoundrel he is. Liz's heart pounded. She was crossing a line into treacherous territory. Still, for the sake of her child, she'd do it. She'd become a cunning strategist in a game she never asked to play. When Liz informed John of her plan to make a public statement about the finances and her role in the company, he balked. Wait, you can't just announce you're taking over shares. That's not how it works. Liz turned to him, arms folded. I already did. Harold's handling the legal side. We're going live on Monday morning. You'll stand by me at the press conference. He looked stunned. Have you lost your mind? This is a high-stakes PR move. Investors will panic if they think I'm not in control. She gave him a withering look. They'll panic if they learn you've defaulted on multi-million-dollar loans. This is our best shot at damage control. And it's a done deal. If you don't cooperate, I'll file for divorce and show the world the evidence of your affair. That'll kill investor confidence faster than anything else. John's face went pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly seeing he was cornered. You're blackmailing me? Liz felt an icy calm. Call it what you want. I call it survival. He rubbed his neck at a loss. Liz, I'm sorry, I really am. But can't we just fix this between us? She snorted. Between us? You mean I should quietly forgive and forget while you keep leveraging shady deals to prop up your empire? No. If you want any hope of salvaging your reputation, you'll do exactly what I say. John sank onto a sofa, defeated. Liz watched him, not without a pang of remorse. She had once loved him deeply. In some small corner of her heart, she might still love the man he used to be the suitor who wooed her with sincerity. But that man was gone, replaced by a desperate schemer. She left him there alone to wrestle with the consequences of his actions. Monday arrived. The press conference was held in a tasteful ballroom of a midtown hotel. Reporters gathered, having been tipped off about an exciting new phase for the Graham-Friedman empire. Cameras flashed as Liz, looking polished in a tailored burgundy dress that gently embraced her pregnant figure, took the podium alongside Harold Friedman and John. Harold opened with prepared remarks, explaining that due to market shifts, the company was restructuring. We're pleased to announce that Mistress, Elizabeth Graham, will be stepping in as an active participant in the company's leadership. Liz took the mic next, carefully modulating her voice to convey both warmth and confidence. It's no secret that the real estate world has faced challenges this past year. My husband and Harold Friedman have worked tirelessly to safeguard our investors' interests, and now I'm proud to support them in a more direct capacity. As our family grows, she placed a hand on her belly. We wanted to ensure a strong, stable future for Graham-Friedman Holdings. I'm stepping into a role where I can assist with strategic decisions, ensuring we meet the needs of not just our shareholders, but our community and our growing family. Her statement was met with polite applause. John's eyes flicked nervously to the cameras. He was forced to smile and nod, as if this was all part of an amicable plan. The man looked trapped, and for the first time, Liz saw him as vulnerable, almost pitiable. But she didn't soften. This was business and her life. Questions followed, mostly from financial reporters. They asked about the company's new strategies, whether there was any pending debt. Harold fielded these deftly, promising a bright future with fresh leadership perspectives. A female journalist asked Liz directly, "Miss Graham, is this a sign that Mr. Graham will be stepping back from day-to-day operations?" Liz forced a diplomatic smile. "He'll remain deeply involved, of course, but yes, for the immediate future, I'll be taking a more hands-on approach. In fact, my background in law and business, a slight stretch, since she'd only worked in a law firm's front desk, but she had studied business basics, will be useful in guiding us through this transitional phase." John leaned into the mic. "Elizabeth has my full support. We're a team." Liz noted how his voice wavered on that last line. The cameras likely picked up the tension, but the official narrative was set. Liz was stepping up to help her husband, a glowing wife, with a baby on the way. The perfect picture of loyalty. After the press conference, they mingled briefly with investors. Liz went through the motions, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on her pregnancy. She saw Bianca lurking at the perimeter of the crowd, eyes dark with envy. But Liz paid her no mind. Privately, Harold handed Liz a thick folder. "The legal documents transferring certain shares to you. It's done. You have controlling interest in the portion designated for the trust. John can't touch it without your consent." Liz felt relief course through her. "Thank you, Harold. You'll be fairly compensated for your help." He gave a small, knowing smirk. "I'm sure we'll work out a mutually beneficial arrangement." In that moment, Liz realized she was forging alliances in a cutthroat world. She'd become a player, no longer the wide-eyed girl from Queens. This was the price of survival and revenge. In the days following the press conference, something odd happened. The company's stock price stabilized, and some of the tension around John's debts eased. High-profile banks gave them better terms, likely reassured by the media narrative of new leadership. Liz found herself busy reviewing documents, signing off on deals that Harold told her were no-brainers. But the tension at home remained thick enough to cut with a knife. John sulked, tried to put on a show of normalcy, but they slept in separate rooms. They spoke only about business or baby matters, never about their relationship. One night, Liz overheard him on a phone call, presumably with Bianca. He was whispering, "I'm sorry, I can't talk now. Things are complicated. Look, I'll handle it." Liz's fists clenched. So much for him ending it. She knew he was lying again, but she kept her cool. She had no intention of repeating the heartbreak of catching him in the act. She had bigger things to do. A week later, a storm raged outside their penthouse. Thunder, lightning, and rain lashing the windows. Liz sat in the living room, reviewing some finance reports Harold had sent. She heard the door open. John, returning from some meeting. He approached, hair damp, face etched with worry. "Liz," he said quietly, taking a seat across from her, "I can't live like this anymore." The silence, the separate rooms, "It's killing me." She set the papers aside. "You should have thought of that before you cheated on me." He slumped, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I made a terrible mistake. I've apologized 100 times. What more can I do?" She studied him, feeling the old conflict swirl in her chest. She was furious, but she also remembered the love they once shared. "Tell me the truth. Are you still seeing her?" John looked away. "No. We just had to clear some financial issues related to the investors she introduced. But it's over." Liz's jaw tightened. "If I find out you're lying, I'll bury you in a scandal so deep you'll never recover." He nodded, tears brimming. "I deserve that, I guess. But Liz, for the baby's sake, can we at least try to find a path forward?" She paused, weighing her words. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you. But for the baby's sake, I'm willing to keep things civil. Do your part, keep your nose clean, and maybe in time I'll consider letting you back in." It was a half-truth. Deep down, Liz knew trust was irreparably broken. Still, playing nice gave her more leverage to finalize her revenge plan. That same night, Derek, the pie, called with urgent news. "Liz, I've been tracking more than just John's affair. The lenders he owes are getting impatient. They're planning something drastic if he doesn't pay up soon." Liz's heart pounded. How drastic? Threats of violence, possibly kidnapping. These are not people who shy away from intimidation. She glanced down at her pregnant belly, her protective instincts flaring. "What do I do?" "Get out of town if you can. Or tighten your security. I've seen men like this before. They'll do whatever it takes to get their money. They might come after you to force John's hand." Liz closed her eyes, overwhelmed. She'd never wanted to be part of a world where the threat of violence was real. But here she was, entwined in her husband's toxic web of debt. Instead of retreating, Liz decided to go on the offensive. She summoned Harold for a private meeting at the penthouse while John was out. She explained the threats, the precarious financial situation, and how it endangered her and the baby. Harold looked pale. "I suspected some hardliners were involved, but not to this extent." Liz inhaled sharply. "Harold, we need to force John to pay off these loans immediately, or at least restructure them in a safer way. Maybe the company can assume them, or maybe we can sell some assets quickly." Harold frowned. "That might tank investor confidence. And the board has to approve major asset sales. They'll demand a reason. If they find out John was personally leveraged, it might blow up." She leaned forward. "They don't need to find out it was personal. We spin it as a strategic realignment. Sell off a few underperforming properties, raise enough cash, pay these guys off quietly. Then we rebuild. This is about our safety." Harold steepled his fingers, thinking, yes, that could work. But we'll have to do it fast, and we'll need John's signature, ironically. Liz's lips curled in a small, grim smile. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. I'll make sure of it. That evening, Liz prepared a thick set of documents that Harold had rushed. A deal to sell several properties that had potential but were also tied up in risky loans. She waited for John in his office, the one adjacent to the penthouse living room. John arrived, removing his tie. He looked exhausted. "What's all this?" She offered him a pen. "Papers to sell some of the riskier properties. It's the best way to get the lenders off our back." He scanned the documents, confusion and suspicion warring in his eyes. "Off our back? So you know about them?" Liz nodded. "I know everything, John. I know you owe them millions, and they're threatening us." "Sign the papers. We sell these properties, generate enough money to pay them off, and come out clean." He tossed the pen aside. "This is insane. These properties could rebound in value next year. We'll lose potential profit. Potential profit is worthless if we're dead," Liz snapped. "They threatened me. Our child. Isn't that enough to make you see reason?" John sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. "God, I never wanted it to come to this." Liz placed the pen in front of him, her voice softer. "John, sign. For our baby's sake." He lifted his gaze, tears brimming. Then, in a trembling hand, he scrawled his signature on each page. Liz felt an odd pang of pity, but she reminded herself this was the man who had betrayed her. Over the next weeks, the properties sold swiftly under Harold's direction. Liz watched the bank accounts fill, ensuring the private lenders were paid off. She thought it was over, that her baby was safe. But an unexpected twist slapped her in the face. The real estate market abruptly soared in that sector. In a matter of months, those properties doubled in value. The buyers made a fortune practically overnight. News headlines praised their shrewd acquisitions, and rumors swirled that the Graham-Friedman empire had foolishly sold at the worst possible time. John was livid. "We got fleeced," he shouted in the penthouse living room. "You made me sell those assets, and now we've lost hundreds of millions in potential profit." Liz bristled. "We also saved our lives, John. Don't forget that." His fury was palpable. "You said we were in danger, but I haven't seen any sign of those goons since. Maybe they were bluffing. We could have weathered the storm and come out on top." Liz's eyes flashed. "Are you seriously blaming me for ensuring our safety? You nearly destroyed us with your reckless debts and your affair." He flung his hands up. "At least I was trying to keep our empire growing. Now, thanks to you, we look weak, incompetent. My entire reputation's in shambles." She glared at him, tears of frustration burning her eyes. "Your reputation? What about my reputation as the humiliated wife you cheated on? Or the unborn child you endangered?" The argument escalated. John shouted about money, about how she'd gone behind his back to overshadow him. Liz hurled accusations of betrayal, reminding him of his affair and reckless borrowing. Tempers flared until John, in a moment of blind rage, slammed his fist against the wall. A crack in the dry wall appeared. Trembling, Liz clutched her belly. She felt a tightening sensation, an early contraction, perhaps triggered by stress. John's face paled. "Liz, are you okay?" She sank onto the nearest sofa, breathing rapidly. "Call an ambulance," she gasped. All anger vanished from his features, replaced by terror. He fumbled for his phone, dialing 911. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, helping Liz onto a stretcher, hooking her to monitors. John rode with her, holding her hand, tears streaming down his face. At the hospital, doctors explained it was a stress-induced complication. Liz was only 34 weeks along. The contractions were early, but they managed to stop them. She would need to rest, avoid anxiety, and stay on bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. John sat by her hospital bed, guilt etched in his features. "I'm so sorry, Liz. I never wanted any of this." Weakly, she turned her head away. You caused all of this. In the following days of bed rest, Liz had plenty of time to think. She had succeeded in protecting herself and her child from immediate danger. John's debts were cleared, and she had controlling interest in certain shares. But the cost had been steep: her emotional health, their potential fortune, and possibly any chance of reconciling. Danielle came to visit, bringing homemade soup and moral support. "So what happens next?" her cousin asked gently, brushing Liz's hair from her forehead. Liz swallowed. "I don't know. Part of me wants to divorce him and walk away, but I also want him to suffer for what he did. Yet, he's the father of my child." Danielle squeezed her hand. "You have to think about the baby first, Liz. You can't keep living in a war zone." Liz closed her eyes. She recalled the times when John was sweet, how he treated her like a queen before the cracks began to show. The heartbreak was so deep, it felt like she'd never fully heal. In a bizarre twist, Bianca showed up at the hospital one afternoon. She found Liz's room after bribing a nurse, apparently. Liz's first instinct was to scream at her to leave, but Bianca held up her hands, tears glistening. "Please, just hear me out." Liz glared. "Fine, you have 5 minutes." Bianca pulled a chair closer. "I'm leaving the VC firm. Harold Friedman is pushing me out. He blames me for the scandal with John." Liz raised an eyebrow, unsympathetic. "You can't expect me to cry for you." Bianca shook her head. "I'm not here for pity. I came to warn you. Harold Friedman is not the ally you think he is." Liz frowned. "What are you talking about?" Bianca leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Harold manipulated both you and John. He knew about those properties' potential rebound. He arranged for close associates to buy them. Harold made a killing while you two looked like fools. Now he's gradually seizing control of the company behind the scenes. It's all in motion." Liz felt her stomach clench. Was Bianca telling the truth or spinning lies out of spite? The more she thought about it, though, the more it made sense. Harold orchestrated the sales, promised they'd pay off the lenders. He insisted on controlling the negotiation. Bianca placed a folder on Liz's bedside table. "Here are copies of the emails I managed to get. They show Harold's instructions to the buyers, telling them to swoop in at the last minute. He played you, Liz. Don't let him get away with it." Liz stared at the incriminating documents, anger flooding her veins. "Why are you giving me this?" Bianca sighed, tears slipping free. "Because I'm done being a pawn in powerful men's games. And maybe I feel guilty for what happened between John and me. I can't undo that, but I can at least help you see the truth." Liz nodded slowly, uncertain if she could trust Bianca, but feeling an undeniable shift in the ground beneath her feet. If this is real, then Harold Friedman is the true villain of this entire saga. He pitted us against each other while reaping the rewards. Bianca squeezed her hand gently. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Harold is dangerous in his own way. He'll stop at nothing to get what he wants." Liz thanked her tersely, still struggling with conflicting emotions about the woman who'd been her husband's mistress. But she recognized a certain sincerity in Bianca's eyes. Once discharged, Liz returned home, determined to verify Bianca's documents. She cross-checked the email headers, recognized Friedman Capital's domain. The dates aligned perfectly with the property deals. Harold had indeed orchestrated a lucrative scheme behind her back, using her fear of the lenders to force a quick sale. Rage surged anew, but Liz was also strangely exhilarated. She had one card left, the controlling interest in the trust shares. Harold's entire plan was built on quietly gaining more power, but if she publicly exposed him, the board might force him out. She needed John's help. Ironically, to break the tie, John still had considerable influence. Liz summoned John, presenting him with the evidence. She saw a flicker of shock, then fury, cross his face. "Harold, my best friend since childhood. He stabbed us in the back." Liz nodded. "Yes, and he made us both look like fools. We can't let him get away with it." I need you to side with me in front of the board, or we'll lose everything. John clenched his fists. I'll do it. Whatever you need. But how? She outlined a plan. They would convene an emergency board meeting, reveal Harold's betrayal, and demand his resignation. In parallel, they'd leak the emails to the press, but spin the narrative that the Grahams, who had been victims of Friedman's manipulations, heroically overcame internal sabotage. It was a bold, risky move. But time was short. Harold was already lobbying to undermine Liz's authority. In a sleek boardroom high above Manhattan, the board members gathered around a polished table. Harold Friedman, looking confident in a charcoal suit, sat at the head of the table. Liz and John walked in together, surprising the onlookers who knew of the couple's recent marital strife. Without preamble, Liz began distributing folders copies of the incriminating emails. Murmurs spread through the room as people flipped through the evidence, eyes widening. Harold's face drained of color. John stood, voice strong. Harold Friedman betrayed this company. He orchestrated the undervalued sale of key properties to his associates, leaving us at a massive loss while he profited. This is not only unethical, it's likely illegal. Harold sputtered. This is a setup. Where did you get these emails? Liz fixed him with a steely gaze. It doesn't matter. They're real, and you know it. I trusted you to help me protect the company, protect my family. Instead, you used me, played on my fears, and siphoned profit to your cronies. You're done, Harold. The board members exchanged glances. Some looked furious, others betrayed. One older member, Adelaide Sampson, who had been on the board for decades, shook her head at Harold. I can't believe you'd stoop this low, Friedman. We've known each other too long for this. Harold rose abruptly, slamming a hand on the table. You're fools if you believe these are all the facts. John had debts that would have sunk us. I did what was necessary to ensure the company's survival. Liz calmly met his gaze. You could have helped us in a transparent, ethical way. Instead, you chose deceit. Now you'll pay the price. John motioned toward the board members. I move that we request Harold Friedman's immediate resignation from Graham Friedman Holdings, pending an internal investigation. All in favor? Hands shot up around the table. Harold stared in disbelief, chest heaving. You're making a mistake, he hissed, grabbing his briefcase. I'll fight this. You haven't seen the last of me. He stormed out, leaving a tense silence in his wake. Adelaide Sampson cleared her throat. Well, that was unexpected. I suppose we'll need to rebrand the company name if Friedman's stake is dissolved. Liz nodded. I'll handle that. I'm stepping up fully to ensure our investors and employees know we have stable leadership. John flashed a supportive smile, though Liz sensed the underlying tension between them. The press devoured the story of Harold Friedman's betrayal. Public sympathy shifted towards the Grahams, painting them as the couple who overcame scandal and sabotage. Stock prices rebounded a bit, confidence somewhat restored. John and Liz offered carefully curated interviews, presenting a united front. In private, though, they were far from reconciled. Liz couldn't forget his betrayal. Yet, ironically, she needed him to keep the business afloat in the short term. When the dust settled, Liz sat in the penthouse nursery, newly completed in soft creams and blues. She ran a hand over her swollen belly. The baby was due in just a couple of weeks. John appeared in the doorway, hesitating. Mind if I come in? She nodded. He sat on the edge of a velvet armchair. We've been through war, haven't we? He said softly. Liz let out a bitter laugh. An understatement. He laced his fingers together, head bowed. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm stepping away from anything shady. I'll do my best to rebuild the company the right way, for our child's sake. She studied him, searching for sincerity. And Bianca? He swallowed. Over, truly over. I'm sorry it happened at all, Liz nodded. If you ever cheat again, I'll destroy you. Understand? He gave a rueful smile. I wouldn't expect anything less. 2 weeks later, Liz went into labor. She delivered a healthy baby boy, whom she named Alexander Jonathan Graham. John was there, tearful and supportive through the birth. For a moment, as Liz cradled Alexander, she wondered if they could start a new clean slate, be a real family. But the scars ran deep. Over the next few months, Liz focused on motherhood and the company, while John worked tirelessly to mend relationships in the business community. They lived like polite roommates rather than husband and wife. Eventually, Liz made a final decision. She filed for divorce, but in a quiet, amicable manner. She had no desire for a public battle that might harm Alexander. Their settlement gave her significant control of the company, while John retained enough shares to remain wealthy beyond most people's imaginations. He moved into another penthouse across town, visited Alexander regularly, and tried to make amends. Liz's revenge, ultimately, was not about destroying John entirely, but ensuring she and her child were secured, respected, and free. She had taken back her power, proven she was more than just a millionaire's wife. As for Harold Friedman, he faced a series of legal challenges that drained his fortune. The last Liz heard, he was operating a modest consultancy firm, far from the glitz of Manhattan's corporate elites. Bianca disappeared from New York's social radar, rumored to be living in Europe. In the end, Liz emerged stronger, a mother and a businesswoman who refused to be broken by betrayal. Her revenge had been the kind that truly shocked everyone, not by wreaking havoc, but by calmly, coldly, and effectively taking charge of her life and future on her own terms. As Elizabeth Graham's story shows, betrayal can come in many forms, but so can resilience. From the glittering penthouses of Manhattan to the stark reality of infidelity and debt, she fought back against a powerful husband and an even more cunning partner. Ultimately, she proved that real strength lies in seizing control of your destiny, no matter the twists and heartaches along the way. Revenge doesn't always require destruction. Sometimes it's about rising above the lies and securing your own future. Elizabeth turned her husband's treachery into a stepping stone for her own success and, most importantly, provided a stable life for her child. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of betrayal, power, and redemption. If you enjoyed this riveting real-life drama fiction, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Your support makes all the difference.